Okay, so let's talk about cropping. And I'm going to use two images where I've already done all the cropping, but I wanted to show you on people why it's very important to keep a few things in mind. And then we're going to go into Lightroom and I'll show you some things that I did there as far as cropping goes. So this is my beautiful friend Brittany, and I'm going to show you first of all full body, some things that we want to avoid when it comes to cropping people. And hopefully, see, this is the first time I've done this with this instruction. So you want to always avoid cropping at the joints. And we know her knee is somewhere around in here. There's her wrist, her elbow, her neck, and even like the very top of her head. That should be up a little bit higher. Let me do that again and show you. More so along the hairline. We don't want to crop right at her hairline. So it's better, and the reason we do this is it just looks bizarre. And I'll show you when I get into Photoshop what I'm talking about. You have a much better idea when you can see those crops actually happening. So you think, well, I've got to crop somewhere on the body. Actually, in this one we didn't have to because I've got a really nice full length of her. But if you had to, you always want to think about, midway, midway here, on the arm, right here, mid-arm. Let's try to avoid cropping women at the waist, or anybody else for that matter, either here or slightly below. It's fine. Be very careful, especially when someone is wearing, something sleeveless, that we don't crop here and make them look as if they, we're looking at this, and they have nothing on. It's always better to come along right here, show the clothing. And so then obviously at the top of her head. Now, if you did want to crop into her face, make sure that you crop through her forehead, not right at the hairline, not right at the chin. We don't want to have these. We don't want that. We don't want these body parts just kind of hanging there looking really weird. All right. So now let's look at, just looking at the face, kind of the same things I was just talking about. We want to make sure we leave some clothing here. So you see I came right below her waist. Now I did get her at the elbow just slightly right there. And I think I was considering her waist as more important at that point. Want to make sure that we are leaving some clothing. So wrong color. So we can actually, if we decided we wanted to crop this a little differently, then we could come here. Oh, we're not cropping with that. There we go. Leaving some clothing. Want to make sure that we, if we were to do this, well, don't ever just chop somebody's head off. It just looks weird. Just trust me on that one. And again, we don't want to crop right here. So if we were going to come right here would be okay. If we had to, then where here is okay. Just, keeping in mind that you don't want to just have this headless person there, or excuse me, this head with no body. It just looks bizarre. Try not to crop right at the edge of someone's face. Same rules apply. We just don't want to we want to make sure there's some breathing room for their face. So we don't want to crop right here at the edge. We don't want to crop right here at the chin. That's a bad idea. And then again, right at the top of the hairline, not a good idea either. So let's look at this in some real time in Photoshop. Here we are. We're going to look at the same ideas that I just talked about, but now we're going to bring this up where you can see it real time and you can see this cropping taking place. By the way, all of these are straight out of camera. I haven't done anything. I haven't touched them. They're nothing has been done to the color or the crop or anything. I will go back and show you some editing basics on this using these same images, but let's just start with cropping. So in Lightroom, I'm going to go to my cropping tool and I'm going to crop this the best way I can. Now you see what we've got going on over here is this person who doesn't belong. And if I am keeping my rules in mind for cropping, then this is better. It's still not ideal, and here's why. I don't like this. I don't like having the lines of someone's arms and legs pointing toward an edge. This is, I don't know, I just feel like it's too tight. It's not enough breathing room. So if I were going to try and salvage this image, there's not a lot I can do with it horizontally. Now I can bring it in this way. I have to be very careful of what's going on down here. Or I could just switch it all together and make it a landscape crop. And we've got this, okay? And there we go. Now, I just cut out a lot of that file. I reduced the file size, and that's a problem if I want to enlarge this at some point, and I just don't, just taken so much information away that it's going to be a problem, and that's something we can talk about later, but I just wanted you to be aware. That's one good reason to shoot the way you want your crops to be. So here's another problem. This is a horizon line here that's crooked. I see this a lot, and it's so easy to fix. Even in Windows, if you're using Windows Explorer with their little crop tool, it's so easy to straighten up a horizon line. It just makes more sense to do that, especially on a true landscape. If you're shooting something that's, outside and it's a mountain range or the beach or whatever, just please straighten that up. That's going to drive me batty if I see a crooked horizon line. Same thing here. Now I wanted you to notice where I did place Macy's head and the dog. We made sure that these guys were, and it had a good bit of the water behind them. Now the dog does have the line here coming through him, but it's not terrible. And we didn't cut Macy's head in half by having a line come through. So just, horizon line, again, let's keep it straight. Let's make sure that we are keeping some nice good space on our edges and giving our people or our subjects room to breathe. Okay, so if we look at a full-length picture here, once again, we're going to straighten this up. And there are two ways to do it. You can do it with the rotate, or you can do it with that, that ruler. But if we're looking and we say, let's make this a 3/4 portrait, we're going to have a little issue there because we're getting very close to her hands, and we get in really tight. So I don't think that's going to work for this image. Now, it could work if we decide we want to go a little bit lower on the leg, but we can't go too much lower or we're going to crop into that ankle. So keeping those rules in mind about joints and not cropping there, I think this is one of those where we say it's going to be best left as a full-length portrait. Her whole body's there, why not? But let's decide, let's say that maybe we do want to go something different. Can we then do this? Sure. We have left both of her elbows intact. We haven't cropped into her shoulders. We're not cropping into her wrists. But obviously we're kind of also losing the gist of this image. So not necessarily something we want to do. So we are going to keep that the way it was. Let's reset this. And I'll show you again where we can go in and get our little ruler and draw from one point to the other, keeping that straight. All right, and then there we go. Okay, much better. Now, I created a problem for myself when I shot this image, and that's because I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do here. I've gotten into the fingers, cropped through the hand already in camera. So I've left myself not too many options. We don't want to crop, again, Macy's elbow off. We want to be careful not to crop Reedy's wrist off. So we can, have left ourselves with basically this is our crop. Now there are a couple of things once I do this that kind of make me a little crazy, and I'll show you what they are. This isn't so bad. I'm not super crazy about this jutting out, but I don't like this. It, to me, just pulls my eye, and so when you're cropping, you just have to be very careful about the things that may pull someone's attention away from your subject. So we're just bringing that in a little bit tighter, and there's what we end up with. Okay, not my favorite, but especially, and again, where we started, if you remember, we've cropped out a lot of image. Now this is one of those deals where it was intentional to leave these leading lines here to make sure those were there in my image. We see some people back here, but what we're going to do is think about those leading lines, think about where they are in the image, and let's use them. Here we have Maisie along the third of this, and we have here this leading line here, and there we go. Okay, so now we've taken something that was in our image that we wanted to use. Trust me, this was intentional, and we've made it strong for us just by cropping that edge out and kind of positioning Macy so that she's more along that third. Here's another image where there's a lot of breathing room here. She's almost to the middle. It's very easy to correct that. Okay, and so we're just going to pull that over. And I'm going to crop in a little bit more so I don't get any of this over here. And now you see her eye right there at that intersecting point, which we have said is a very strong intersecting point. Looking at this image, the first thing I notice is this being a problem. My people are a little too centered for me. So we are going to correct both of those things at once. And it's that easy. Now there's a lot of stuff going on here that we're not crazy about. This is a problem. We've cut through their faces. This is our subject. So let's really focus on her, but let's leave her parents back there because that was a big part of this image. Okay, there you go. We can actually slide this over a little. There we go. All right. Again, this kind of bothers me. Get rid of it all together. Now, this is one of those images I look at and I think, oh, that's fine. Now, this may be a problem, but because we have all of this going along the side too, it's not just there by itself. This kind of maybe bother me a little, but I feel like it's not really pulling away, mainly because the stem kind of along the same color family here. All right. Now, there are two ways to crop this image, and we can look at it as a horizontal, which is what I'm going to do first. And we crop in here, keeping in mind, just kind of keeping those lines and trying not to crop into the top of the chair. But now on the second image, same thing. I will crop in to that chair because it really gets a little dicey. We definitely don't want to lose her hands. And so, oh, sorry. Let's reset that. So here we go. And we'll crop down, just bring that down just a little bit that way. Okay. Of the two, I definitely prefer the horizontal, but you never know. Maybe one of those things where you decide, I want to give the parents an option. I'm going to skip that one and go right here. Obviously, we have some image problems here with these cones, but the main problem for me was this. And so we're just going to crop that out very quickly. Whoops. I'm going to try that again. Here we go. Now, I have some issues here. This is a Photoshop problem. This is a Photoshop problem. This is too. This is my finished product. No, I didn't really take care of this in Photoshop, and I probably could have brought that in a little bit tighter and gotten rid of all of this, but I didn't want to crop into these benches. I didn't want my edge coming into that because there again is a tangent. So I'm just always trying to think of those things, and I wanted to leave space here. So just keep in mind what is on the edges of your image, especially in these landscape pictures where it's outdoors, it's a scene that you want, and try to make sure you're preserving as much of your image as possible. So let's go. Oh, where's my pen? There we go. So let's look at this last one. This is really bothering me a little too much. I think it's way too bright. So we're going to bring that in. And I'm going to actually slide this over just a little bit. And the reason that I did that, I like this leading line coming straight into the corner here. All right. Well, let's straighten out that horizon. I feel like it's a little crooked too. So there you go. This is implied. It is not easy necessarily to see that horizon line, but you know it's there. Okay, so that just gives you an idea of cropping and why it's important and what you need to watch out for when you're cropping. Cleaning things up out of the background, making sure that what is in your image is what you really want in your image, making sure your subject is very clear, that we don't sit there and wonder what the subject is, making sure to avoid tangents and preserving all of the limbs, well, hands and feet and heads and things like that. That's really important. All right, there you go, guys.